Hey gamer guys! Have you heard of the KT-R1 or KT Pocket R1? This mysterious and very expensive portable console caused quite a stir in the world of retro game emulation in 2023, promising state-of-the-art performance and compatibility with various classic consoles, thus arousing the curiosity of gamers of all ages. But is it really all that? On paper it seems so, but let's see it in practice. The first thing that strikes me is its price, which is almost double that of the Anbernic RG405M and around $200 more than the Anbernic RG505 and Powkiddy X28. In view of this, I imagined that there would be a great technical disparity, at least on paper, between them, and let's focus on the closest competitor by way of comparison, the Anbernic RG405M. The first thing we'll look at is the console emulation performance rating. Here we see that the KT-R1 is rated as being able to emulate Sega Saturn games at full speed, with an additional GameCube and Wii being able to run the vast majority of games from these consoles well. Moving on to the Anbernic RG405M, it has the same performance as the Sega Saturn, but doesn't do very well on the GameCube and Wii, depending on the frame skip in the vast majority of games. For those who don't remember frame skip, basically, frame skip allows your computer to skip the rendering of a few frames during the game, usually when your device is underperforming. Having understood that, let's move on to the benchmark results. The KT-R1 has a MediaTek Helio G99 SoC with a CPU consisting of a Cortex A76 and A55 going up to 2.2 GHz in turbo mode. With this setup, it scored 754 in single-core and 2068 in multi-core. On the other hand, the Anbernic RG405M has a Unisoc Tiger T618M, made up of a Cortex A75 and A55 CPU, and the scores are as follows. So, the KT-R1 is 75% faster in single-core performance, and this means that it will run tasks that rely on a single core, such as simple games, considerably faster. It's also 29% faster in multi-core performance, and that means a good helping hand in 3D rendering and multiplayer games. But games depend heavily on a good GPU, so let's get to it. The KT-R1's GPU is the Mali G57MC2, which operates at a maximum frequency of 950 MHz and has a Vulkan score of 1372 and 1295 in OpenCL. The RG405M has a Mali G52MP2 GPU that operates up to 850 MHz and has a Vulkan score of 1050 and 1146 in OpenCL. Remembering that the Vulkan score is more relevant to modern games and applications, while the OpenCL score is more relevant to general computing tasks, this means that the KT-R1 will perform better in modern games, 30% more, and slightly better in general computing tasks, 13% more. And well, so far we've seen that the KT-R1 is kicking Anbernic's ass, so I could call it a day, right? Wrong, I'm not satisfied yet. Let's see how this translates into practice. So, gameplay, let's go. Before starting and considering the benchmark results, I would have guessed this performance, but let's see. Here we see a PS2 game comparing the RG405M with the KT-R1, and it seems to me that it's doing better. Really, let's watch it for a few seconds in silence. And while we watch a collection of PS2 games running on the KT-R1, I'll say my last words. Despite marginally better performance in high-end console emulation, the price hike doesn't seem justified, especially with more promising handhelds on the horizon, boasting superior chipsets and more appealing pricing. At this stage, I can conclude that the KT-R1 excels as a PSP emulator with an adjustable screen for dimness. Perhaps with custom firmware and further chip optimization, it could evolve into a more formidable gaming device. But for now, it stands as an overpriced PSP emulator, with cheaper alternatives matching its performance level. And about PS2 emulation, many games needed underclocking to achieve playable performance while minimizing frame rate dips. Sound stuttering was also a common issue in several games, detracting from the overall experience. If you're not keen on extensive tinkering to make your PS2 ROMs playable, the KT-R1 may not be your ideal choice. It lacks the performance required to be a top-tier PS2 emulation handheld. Do you agree with my analysis? Leave something in the comments. So I'm off. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing and see you in the next video.